Will sent me this video. It's called The Zelda Game You Can Only Play Once a Week. Zelda History by the Bread Pirate. I'm gonna give it a go. He's got just nearly under 9k subs. Nearly under. He's under 9k. Whatever. You know what I mean. So let's give this. It's got a good amount of views here as well. This guy's doing good. So let's have a look. Let's check this out.
If you're a Zelda fan, chances are you've binged one or two of the games. There's no shame in it. We've all done it at one point or another. You know, a few hours here, a few hours there. It's a great way of de-stressing. But what if I told you there used to be a Zelda game you could only play for 60 minutes a day and only once a week? Wow. Sound weird enough? Well, that's just the beginning.
What if I told you that the weird sound you heard was a fact? Wait, it says whiff I told you.
But everyone calls me Bread. I respond to every comment, and I make lots of Zelda content.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie, guys. I really... Do I have Breath of the Wild on Switch? Was it digital or was it cartridge? I'm thinking of replaying that game, man.
Today, we're talking about The Legend of Zelda BS Edition. All right. Get your brain out of the gutter for a second. I know what you're thinking, and no, it does not stand for baloney stew. The BS stands for Broadcast Satellite. Long before the days of the Nintendo Switch docking port, the Japanese NES, aka the Super Famicom, had a docking port of its own, an attachment called the Satellaview. What? Amusingly, the Satellaview was larger than the Super Famicom itself, yet it served a revolutionary purpose. The Satellaview could download information from space. Without boring everybody by going into the science of it or explaining how Nintendo was able to rent a satellite network, let's cut to the chase.
That's crazy.
This was the first time Nintendo gave people the ability to download games onto their consoles. In fact, this was a full 11 years before the Wii Shop channel became a thing.
Holy crap.
Something else unique about the Satellaview, aka BS system, was its main menu. It was a game in and of itself. After you typed your name and selected a gender, you were plopped into an earthbound-looking town called the town whose name
did that just say boy and girl?
Stolen. Each of the buildings acted as menu options, and you could even buy items with in-game currency that would customize your character. This town right here, this is how you accessed the BS Legend of Zelda games. And yes, that was plural, games with an S. A grand total of 4 of them, released in this order. BS The Legend of Zelda Map 1, BS The Legend of Zelda Map 2, A Link to the Past, and BS The Legend of Zelda Ancient Stone
Holy
Tablets.
crap, so it was like...
However, A Link to the Past will not be discussed in this video. It was a copy and paste of the original game from the Super NES, except now it was downloadable from space for the Super Famicom.
Damn, they were ahead of themselves.
The BS Legend of Zelda maps are where things start getting juicy. These maps are a remake of the original Legend of Zelda for the NES. Made with the help of its satellite.
All you need is a server, though. But then again, you'd need internet to do that.
Company Nintendo remade the entirety of the game with updated graphics, resynthesized music, new dungeons, and quality of life improvements, such as the ability to quick swap items without going into your main menu. It's also interesting to note, you did not play as Link in this game. Instead, you played as an avatar of the player, either a boy or girl, depending on who you chose in the main menu of the town whose name was stolen.
So it was like, what?
People really seem to love this remake. In fact, it was so lovable that they made a sequel to it, The Legend of Zelda BS Map 2. It's another recreation of the original Legend of Zelda, but this time with a new overworld and new dungeons. It was still the same basic game, but rearranged a little bit. That way, exploration stayed fresh. Okay. Many Zelda fans go as far as to title these two games as the third quest and the fourth quest of the original Legend of Zelda. Obviously,
that's a whole timeline.
The original quest, Quest 1, which is The Legend of Zelda, and Quest 2, which was the harder game mode you could unlock if you named your character Zelda in the original game.
Really?
But that's just an observation from the fans.
Yeah, but
the coolest part about these games was
I love playing as Zelda, the green guy.
Because the Satellaview could directly stream information to the player, Nintendo could cause world events to happen as you were playing.
No way.
For instance, stunning all enemies on screen, giving you unlimited bombs, or making dungeon enemies appear in the overworld. Some events were helpful, and some were meant to challenge the player. There was even live voice acting. The old man that you find in the first cave would regularly speak to you telepathically, giving you tips and warnings. Actually, now that I think about it, that made this the first Nintendo-produced Zelda game with voice acting. Overall, it was an impressive game, especially for 1995. But we haven't even started talking about the fourth BS Legend of Zelda game, BS The Legend of Zelda Ancient Stone Tablets, the sequel to A Link to the Past, that you never knew about. Similar to the previous 2 games, or should I say maps, Ancient Stone tablets featured an avatar of the player instead of Link.
They're
but
just
this time, there was lore behind it, explained
like
through
re-rendered.
voice acting.
No way.
In the land of Hyrule, it's been 6 years since Ganon was defeated, but Zelda has been plagued with nightmares that tell her about a dark force that is returning. It is the job of the player to collect 8 stone tablets, which contain clues for finding a secret weapon, which can fend off this returning evil.
Man, that's got some Greek mythology roots.
Look, I'm not
there.
saying this game has the best storyline or anything.
There's a story in Greek mythology of Hera, I think her name was, Zeus's wife, having a nightmare about Olympus being overthrown, but there was a hero that helped. I forgot who it was. I think the giants escaped, the Hecaton Keyrays. They escaped, rised up, and started like battling the gods of Olympus. And then Heracles was the worst one in the vision, actually helped out. But the irony being is that Hera didn't like Heracles because basically she said, I know this is off tangent, but I like including stuff like this. She said that in her dream it was a line of Perseus that helped out. So Zeus decided, like, because he was just shagging everyone, basically Zeus, he was just planting his seed in every person possible. He decided, screw it, I might as well help along the way of this vision. So it was just his excuse to, like, you know, have his end away. And yeah, Heracles was born. But Hera hated him because he was the production of Zeus's child, what she wasn't part of. So she did everything she could to make this guy's life a living hell. But then it turned out that he was the one that actually helped out in the end. So there's some kind of lesson to be learned there, guys. Yeah.
It's been cool that they made a direct sequel to A Link to the Past. Even gameplay-wise, this was super ambitious. Depending on how long you played the game, certain side quests would become available. Characters would move around the map, and rain would occur at random times, making NPCs go inside their houses.
That's
Hence,
awesome.
This was the first time Nintendo used a clock to control the way NPCs worked in a Zelda game. And it wasn't until Majora's Mask came out 3 years later that a system like this returned.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And
Majora's
in
Mask
case it
was
wasn't
awesome.
clear, this game had voice acting too. It highly fascinates me, and I love diving into these games. I might
wanna
make a
hear
video
the
about this in the
voices.
future, but we'll have to wait and see about that. Everything about these games just seems so perfect. It's as if there's no problems or issues with them.
All right, you can only play. I
Guys,
forgot about that.
This is 1995. Of course there's a catch. Multiple of them, in fact. First off, these games were only released in Japan. Minus A Link to the Past. The Super Famicom was the Japanese version of the Super NES.
Okay.
Hence, none of these games were
I
compatible
thought the
with
Super
consoles
Nintendo was made in
outside of
Japan.
Furthermore, Nintendo didn't bother acquiring satellite transmissions in other places around the world. For a short time, Nintendo considered teaming up with Microsoft to localize the game in North America.
Oh my God.
But this plan fell through, probably because of expenses involved and the lack of interest from American consumers. Speaking of expenses, there were a lot of those. A lot. On top of buying a Super Famicom and a Satellaview, you had to either
$468. That was a lot of money back then.
buy
That's like the equivalent of like, I don't know, about
a BS
700.
tuner or rent one for 6 months. That's the thing that decrypts the radio signals. On top of that, you also had to pay a monthly fee to access the signal.
Oh my
And
God.
yes, these prices are adjusted for modern day inflation. So buying a BS rig in 1995 is the equivalent of $732
I knew it.
in
I'm a
2021.
genius.
And that's not counting the fees for the BS tuner, or the unknown monthly fees required for accessing Nintendo's satellite network, or the optional extra rewritable slotted cartridges you could store your games on.
Oh my
Cheesy
God.
Louise, it's a miracle anybody
Only the rich. This is like the Wall Street guys. Only the Wall Street could play these
bought
games.
this thing. Hey, do you remember a minute ago when I said Nintendo rented a satellite network? They did this by investing stocks in a company called Saint Giga, which is short for Satellite Digital Audio Broadcasting Company, Ltd. Wait,
Okay.
never mind, we don't get it either. It's a company credited as being the first digital radio satellite company in the world. So most of the profits that they made were done via their 24-hour jazz broadcast, or at least it was
Yes.
before they teamed up with Nintendo in 1995. Unfortunately, this is what leads us to our biggest problem with the BS Zelda games. Because St. Giga insisted on
See,
being
back
a
then, I don't
primate-
know, like, were these games considered like, you know, how we see games today? Were people like completely blown away by them? Like, I guess they were because it's a new thing. But like, if I were teleported back in time to like the 90s, I would be so depressed knowing that like this is the technology that, I don't know.
primarily music-based company, there was only a 3-hour time span when you could download games to play, a time that varied at different points in the company's history. The rest of the time slots were taken up by jazz, poetry, and hippie nature sounds. Seriously, I can't make this up.
Okay, so it was like a selling channel pretty much, or... So they use this satellite to sell things, but
And
also...
still yet, in the case of the Zelda series...
Hang on, so they had to pay, but they had to pay for playing for 60 minutes every week, and you had to pay a fee for that.
3 hours is a
What if you like had to do something in that hour where it was available? You know, like you have to. I don't know. That's crazy.
misleading time frame. Remember how these games are voice acted? Well, those voice actors were acting live. As in, none of it was pre-recorded that you were hearing on the screen.
No way.
Each of the voice actors were only hired once a week to say these lines for this video
Yeah, but they'd have to. What were they? So they were monitoring people's gameplays.
game, and only for an hour at a time. Hence, players only had 60 minutes to play their live-streamed games, and only once a week.
That is insane.
It's alright though, things got worse. It took 7 minutes to download your game each week, and 3 minutes at the end, which were used to save your game and give you a high score. And these breaks in the gameplay happened during your 60 minutes. Effectively, this meant that each player had 50 minutes to play the game, not 60. But at least your progress between each week was saved. Stuff you did in week 1, such as completing a dungeon or collecting items, would be saved until
You
week
can complete
2,
a
and
dungeon
week
in
2
50
to week
minutes.
3, and then week 3 to week 4, which was the final week of each of the games.
I guess it's something to look
What
forward
would happen
to.
if I missed a chapter?
Excellent question. In order to figure that out, I contacted BS experts, Duke, Serkle, and Khan, the exact same people who founded the BS Zelda homepage back in 1999, and to this day
Damn.
are maintaining it. The answer I got was not the answer I expected. Different games handle this in different ways. In the first BS Zelda game, you would have to try and collect the Triforce pieces from the previous week or weeks
Wow.
that you missed within the remaining time. Not necessarily by the end of the current broadcast.
So what? Like, there's only a set amount of time. Obviously, you get like an hour, 50 minutes. But then, is there a set amount of like days or weeks or whatever where you have to complete the game by, or does it just reset
Unless
everything?
it was the final broadcast. So yeah, you were pretty much hung out to
BS
dry and be
experts.
expected to pick up the slack. By the time Ancient Stone Tablets was made, Nintendo must have realized that this was far too harsh on players. And they came up with a better system. In Ancient Stone Tablets, it's not possible to access dungeons from previous broadcasts. Instead, you will find a thief blocking the entrance. When spoken to, the thief will say that in ransacking the dungeon, he's found a lot of junk he has no need for, and will hand the player the key items from the dungeon.
I've got a lot of. I don't know. I don't know what this is. That's the Great Sword of Zelda. Yeah, it's a load of shit. You can have it, buddy. You just take it. Also, there's this weird triangle thing. That's the Triforce. Yeah, you have it. Don't worry. I'm just gonna get these rocks and grapes, and I'm gonna go sell them. See you later, loser.
A heart piece, a stone tablet, and say the bow for Dungeon 1 and the hammer for Dungeon 3. You get the idea. End quote. But if you missed something from outside of the dungeon, like a heart piece hidden in a cave somewhere, then you were not given any help. If you wanted that heart piece, then you had to backtrack and waste time in doing so. And
Damn.
yes, it was possible to play each of these games and never see the ending because you were too slow at playing the game. But on the off chance you did complete the game, there was a really cool reward for that. At the end of each game session, during those 3 minutes when the game was saving, you were given a score for your performance. More rupees and
so there
hearts
was-
and
how many
items
weeks was
collected
that?
meant more points.
You get 4 weeks to do this in. So you get 4 hours. So 50 times 4. 100 to what 200 minutes, which is 6, 12, 18, 3 hours and 20 minutes.
You were given a score for your performance. More rupees and hearts and items collected meant more points. And at the bottom of the
So you basically had 3 hours and 20 minutes to complete this game.
screen, you were given a code that could then be submitted to St. Giga. If you got the most points for that week, then you would get mailed back a prize. No one knows
That's
what
pretty cool.
the prizes were since they were documented so poorly, but they existed. Probably.
An RPG, man. Oh no, never mind. A rocket propeller grenade. You won! Here's an RPG!
Thankfully, all 3 of these games were rebroadcasted at later dates, so if you missed the game this month, then you might still be able to play it next
What does RPG stand for, actually? Is it Rocket Propelled Grenade? Rocket Punching Gnome.
month, or even next year. Granted, the games were still only available once a week, but at least you had multiple chances to play it. Well, you did, but then in 1998 that changed, and not for the better. In 1998, St. Giga was in crippling debt, and Nintendo tried helping. After outlining a plan to reduce spending, they sent it over to Giga, and Giga promptly refused.
Oh.
Then in August, St. Giga failed to meet a deadline to apply for a broadcasting license, which apparently...
Hang on a sec. Go back.
St. Giga was in
So they were
crippling debt, and
in
Nintendo
debt.
tried helping. After outlining a plan to reduce spending, they sent it over to Giga, and
So Nintendo, out of the goodness of their own heart, said to this company, listen, you're in debt. We've got a plan for you. Cut these expenses. And they
Giga
said, no.
promptly refused. Then in August, St. Giga failed to meet a deadline to apply for a broadcasting license, which apparently you need. This was the last straw for Nintendo, and in 1999, they halted all production of Satellaview games.
You get what you deserved.
Thus, all 3 BS Legend of Zelda games were never broadcasted again.
Damn.
So, what happened to the BS Zelda games? Nobody knows for sure. It's likely that Nintendo has the BS Zelda games hidden in their attic at Nintendo HQ, but they have yet to re-release them. Some people have a hope that the games will return for the 35th anniversary of the Legend of Zelda series. That's a far-flung hope, but it's a hope nonetheless. In my opinion, Nintendo hasn't completely forgotten
I'm in the mood now to play Majora's Mask.
about the games. In 2011, Hyrule Historia was published, and it mentions the BS Zelda games twice. Granted, Nintendo didn't directly write Hyrule Historia, but they did authorize it, proving that they are aware of the game's existences. My personal theory is that Nintendo has always wanted to have the chance to resell these games, but they haven't been able to do it because the games are structured so weirdly. Thankfully, there's still one way to play the BS Zelda games.
Okay.
All you have to do is search up BS Zelda homepage, and this collection of links will show you how to I'm sorry, that was weird.
Oh, emulation.
As I was saying, if you go to BS Zelda homepage, the same one which is maintained by Duke Circle and Khan, you can find the files you need to laminate the games. Dang it, why can't I say this word?
You fool! Did you try speaking the forbidden word?
These Nintendo ninjas.
How'd you get in here? Wait, how long have you been in that closet? Do you have any
Bruh, he's recording with a blue
idea
snowball.
what you've done? The eyes of Nintendo are everywhere! They're gonna
Yeah, they're Nintendo ninjas. You know they exist, guys. The Nintendo ninjas exist. It's so crazy.
shut down our channel now! I just wanted to play games!
Nintendo's releasing a new game soon as well. Supposedly. It's called Cease and Desist. The board game. I'm joking.
Seriously, guys, the games are on the website if you'd like to play them. They even have versions of the game which remove the clock and allow you to play at your own pace. It might be
Remove the clock now, mate. You want to go
a
in.
bit confusing to navigate the website at first, but trust me, the games are there. And I can't express how thankful I am to the people who run this website for preserving
Damn, yeah, from 1999. Did they say? Or is it 1990? When was... These guys, they've been running this website for like 22
the
years.
history around one of the most interesting Zelda games to ever exist.
And it's the old school kind of like forum.
But wait a minute, what's that on the website? Oh, it's a subscribe button. How'd you get there, you fuzzy pickle you? Remember, we respond to every comment. Yes, every single one.
I doubt you do, mate. Yeah, I cannot reply to all comments anymore. But hey, that was a good video. What other stuff does this guy do? Oh, don't apologize about the comments, mate. Jesus, you can't be expected to reply to every single one. Looks good though, man. Guys, go check him out. Yeah, I'll link the channel in the chat here, and obviously it'll be in the description of the video. But if you're inclined for this kind of content, then be sure to subscribe. Me personally, I don't know if you know what? No, you know what? Listen. The only reason I don't want to is because if I don't watch most of the videos he puts out, then my sub goes nowhere, and I hate a dead sub. I'll support this guy by sending you guys his way. So, yeah. Go give him some love, guys. This guy's awesome. This guy's awesome.